Potential man, Captain Cope, we've all seen the memes. Every time people talk about Megumi, it's always if this or if that. But when shit gets real in a fight, it's always the same strategy. Summon Mahoraga and pray for the best. With all this potential and lack of feats, it's easy to label Megumi Fushiguro as a fraud, because he just doesn't live up to the hype. But I don't think the potential man meme is actually making fun of his biggest flaw. I think it's describing it. Because it's not just that he keeps almost dying to Mahoraga, it's that he does it like it doesn't cost him anything, like there's no sacrifice involved, like his own life really isn't worth protecting in the first place. That isn't really a strategy. It's low-key a cry for help. And once you take a deeper look at his past, his mentality, and his motivations, it starts to become apparent that there's more to him than just potential. The same thing people call bad writing might actually be the most important part of his character. Okay, to start, we gotta understand why people even call him Potential Man, because the allegations aren't exactly wrong. He's trained personally by Gojo, he's got Zen in blood, and a technique that can rival Gojo's Limitless. That's a stupid amount of hype to load onto one character. And then his go-to strategy the second shit hits the fan is popping Mahoraga, no matter how suicidal it is. I mean, that guy summoned Mahoraga for Haruta back in Shibuya. It gets me because he does this over every minor inconvenience, even though the first thing Mahoraga does every time he summons him is try to kill Megumi. Every fight is the same formula. Big build-up, then taking a gamble. So yeah, on the surface, all potential, no payoff is a fair point. Anyway, when Sukuna gets a close look at the Ten Shadows technique, he isn't just clocking a strong ability, he's evaluating a potential vessel. He sees a body and a soul that can hold him without hindering him the way Yuji does. That doesn't just happen, it's not a coincidence. Sukuna is the single most selective and contemptuous character in the entire verse. Yet after seeing what Megumi is capable of, he decides he's worth taking over. He wasn't just gonna hand the keys to the strongest curse technique in all of history to some fraud. He chose Megumi because he saw the ceiling for his skills, and how capable he was in reaching them. So if this potential is real, why does he keep almost dying to his own technique, rather than honing his skills to fight more effectively? I don't think it's a plot hole. I think it's a core trait in Megumi's character, and it's a lot darker than just being reckless. Here's where I think the whole fraud meme misses the point, because it treats Mahoraga like a writing crutch instead of what it actually is, a symptom. Compare Megumi to Yuji for a second. Yuji has a savior complex to save everyone, to do the right thing, and to be the bigger man, all of that. But Megumi is fundamentally different. He operates on pragmatic morals. He won't just save everyone, he says how he saves people unequally. In his eyes, some people are worth saving and others aren't. He isn't above tasks like killing people if it means saving someone better. His desire to see good people live is selfish but also realistic. The thing is, when you decide on who lives, your own name is never really on that list. Megumi has no problem summoning Mahoraga because he doesn't value his own life. He isn't being brave or reckless, at least in the traditional sense. The act of summoning Mahoraga is a defense mechanism, built on his low self-esteem. He values Sumiki, he values Yuji and Nobara, even strangers he's never met, but he doesn't value his own life in the same way. He sees it as expendable, so it makes sense that when things are going south in a fight, it isn't him going for broke or taking a gamble. It's him choosing to end it, both literally and figuratively. And to be honest, I think it's worth asking where that even comes from. I mean, Megumi was abandoned by Toji at a young age, but he didn't really grow up resenting his dad that much. I mean, he barely remembered him. But typically, kids who get abandoned don't usually grow up blaming the parent who left. They grow up believing that they were the problem. So it's not too far of a stretch to say that Megumi has a pretty low opinion of himself. Not to mention the Zenin clan trying to buy him back because he inherited their prized curse technique, the Ten Shadows technique. With all that history, you get someone whose value was never really about who he was. It was tied to what he could be, what his potential was. He never got the chance to build a sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to being useful to someone else. His life only mattered if he was buying Sumiki's safety. That's why in a weird, freaky way, Mahoraga was his comfort zone. Not because he didn't fear dying, but because gambling his own life to take the threat down with him lined up with how he already saw himself. And this is exactly what Gojo's calling out in that whole speech about dying to win versus risking death to win. It wasn't just a throwaway mentor line. That was Gojo looking directly at Megumi's core flaw and addressing it. Every fight Megumi's in, he isn't able to give it his all, because in the back of his mind, he knows that in the worst case, he can resolve everything at the cost of his own life. From Gojo's perspective, Megumi uses Mahoraga as a way to avoid trusting himself. That reframes the whole fraud meme. He wasn't failing to reach his potential because the writing was inconsistent. He was narratively intended not to reach it because his character flaw prevented him from living up to his potential, until he put in the effort to fix it. And he does fix it, which is why the Culling Games arc is so important for his character. Because it's the first time we properly see him stop hiding behind Mahoraga, or using it as a crutch in every fight. This is the part of the argument where I think people gloss over the most, because it isn't a flashy mid-fight realization, it's a subtle mindset shift. Looking at his fight with Reggie in Season 3, it's pretty obvious that Megumi is different from who he was in the first season. He isn't walking around ready to whip out Mahoraga at the slightest sign of danger. He's putting his own skills and battle IQ to use. The whole fight between him and Reggie was amazing to watch because you're seeing Megumi trust his own judgment. He uses the space of the gymnasium to pop his domain. He uses the shadows casting environment to his advantage, all to box Reggie in and control the battle before it gets out of hand. He doesn't underestimate Reggie and has an actual plan in mind that doesn't involve him using Mahoraga to win. He uses subtle tactics to trick Reggie into thinking his demon dog was out of commission, all to catch him by surprise later on. All of this proves how he trusts his own read in a fight over just killing himself. And then there's the part that actually matters most, his willingness to actually kill Reggie. He wasn't just busting his ass the entire fight to capture Reggie. He was out for blood. He was ready to get his hands dirty. That wasn't just him acting cold-hearted for no reason. That's him taking Gojo's words to heart. He isn't treating his own life as expendable currency he can cash in on the second things get out of hand. He's playing for keeps in the fight in front of him, rather than gambling his life away with Mahoraga. I think this is where his character arc kinda comes together. A guy who used to treat himself as disposable, learning mid-death game that he doesn't have to. But here's what ties the entire fraud debate together, and it's the point I don't think gets talked about enough. The reason Megumi never became a Gojo or a Sukuna level threat. It isn't a limitation of his character, or him just being a fraud. I think it's Defiance. Now we're at the place where we can actually answer the whole potential thing. And it's not really about Megumi's power, I think it's more about the choice he makes. Megumi had the potential to end up at the peak of strength where Gojo and Sukuna stood. The 10 Shadows technique, the dedication, the training under the strongest sorcerer of today. He could have abandoned his humanity to reach the pinnacle of sorcery. If he really wanted to chase the limits of his potential, nothing was really stopping him. But look at what he's actually chasing strength for. It's not glory or proving himself to the Zenin clan. It's not living up to what Jujutsu Tech expects out of their prodigy. It's protecting Sumiki. It's doing whatever small good he can along the way. And honestly, it's a pretty normal and unremarkable reason to chase power. And I think that's the point. Megumi's strength and potential was never to achieve some higher purpose. It was personal. And that's only possible because Gojo gave him the choice to be that. Gojo as his benefactor, and instead of raising another tool for the Jujutsu world to use, he lets Megumi just live. To protect his sister, to do what good he can, and not owe the Zenin clan or anyone else a potential version of him that he never really wanted to be. Which is kind of poetic if you think about it, because Gojo never got that choice. Gojo was never allowed to be a person. He was meant to be a symbol that the entirety of Jujutsu society will put their expectations on. He wasn't given the choice. There's something kind of tragic about the guy who never had a choice, making sure the next generation does. That's why Megumi never meets his potential. Not because he was a fraud or anything, but because someone let him decide for himself. And he decided to just be a normal-ass guy. Doing normal things, sometimes immoral or messed up, but still living on his own terms at least. So no, Megumi wasn't a fraud. I think he might be the only person in the entire story who got handed the tools to become extraordinary, and used them to stay ordinary intentionally. Because everyone who reaches the top in JJK loses something to get there. There's always a sacrifice involved. Sukuna lost his humanity, and Gojo lost the chance to ever become a person, isolated by his own strength. And Megumi was set to be on that exact same path. I mean, he had the potential to get there. The only difference is, somebody finally gave him a way out of it. So when he picks Sumiki over his potential, when he picks being good enough over the strongest, that wasn't him failing to live up to his potential. That was him getting to walk away from the world as a person instead of a monster. Megumi was never potential man because he couldn't reach his potential. He was potential man because everyone else only ever saw what he could become. While Gojo was the only person who let him decide who he wanted to be.